Joining me in this episode is Micah Remley, CEO of Robin, the leading workplace management platform revolutionizing hybrid work. Enjoy the conversation. You're listening to Working Forward, a future of work focused podcast from People Forward Network. These episodes pave the road ahead, helping us confidently step into the future as a leader who moves people forward. After all, the best way to predict the future is to create it. Let's go. Mr. Micah Remley, it's great to see you, sir. Thanks for being on Working Forward with us today. How are you doing?
Thanks, Jason. Doing fantastic today, and thank you for having me. Excited to be on the show today.
Yeah, absolutely. So before we hit record, we're just kind of reminiscing, like you had some really fun, exciting stuff that you just did for your birthday, didn't you? Why don't you tell the audience, because I think they'll love hearing this too.
Yeah, I just spent 2 weeks in the wilderness as part of my birthday. I just had a milestone birthday. I won't tell you which milestone birthday, but I just had a milestone birthday. We'll keep that secret, exactly. And decided the way I wanted to spend it was with folks that my family and loved ones in the wilderness. We went out west to Idaho and Wyoming, and we just had a fantastic time. And I got to tell you, 2 weeks with folks you love without external, all the stuff that we're bombarded with every day, without devices, without everything else, was just the restorative thing that I needed. It was awesome. And to have we had to evacuate camp one morning. We're in Yellowstone National Park. We had a herd of bison come through camp, and it sort of makes you rethink about what priorities really are. A really bad thunderstorm did a lightning bolt, almost hit our camp one night, all those things. But this is what adventure's about, and helps you remind you what priorities are about and everything. So it was a fantastic 2 weeks, and just such a great way to celebrate a milestone birthday. So really happy and lucky that I was able to do something like that.
Well, congratulations on the birthday milestone. And the way you put that is we don't realize how pampered we are until we kind of get out in the great outdoors sometimes and quote unquote tough it out a little bit. And then it's like, oh, we have a thundering herd of bison. We might want to be careful around here. Or we have a lightning storm, and we're not necessarily inside an enclosed structure like our home. That stuff just reminds you, I think, a lot of times of just how fortunate we are with a lot of the stuff we have. But the other thing, too, that you were sharing with me is it was really nice on that, even though, and we're going to get into kind of what you do as the CEO at Robin, which is a software company. It was kind of nice to unplug from the technology and the news cycle, wasn't it?
So nice to unplug. I got to tell you, I think life is about balance in general, and having a good, productive life is about balance across lots of different things. And we are so bombarded, and it's part of the nature of my job. I've got to be very, very connected all of the time. So I do try to take very specific periods of time, because the most 98% of my time I have to be very, very plugged in. But I think having those moments, in this case, it was a little longer than I normally would do, to really truly unplug, I think is really important. I think it helps you find balance again. And I kind of do that a little bit on a daily basis too. I bike commute, and during the bike commute, I'm not looking at my phone the entire time. So it's a relatively short period of time, but it's often when I do my best thinking. It's when you really get perspective on things. You can think things through more deeply rather than just superficially. And we talk a lot, I think, about presence in today's media, but we're really not good about practicing presence. I think we like saying it. I think we like talking about it, but we don't really practice it. And it's amazing. Once you're out of cell range and your phone's not working anymore and everything else, then you really, truly have to be it. And it's a little bit, it takes some time to adjust to it. A couple of days, you're like, you don't know what's going on. It's amazing. But then once you adjust to it, you're like, wow, this is really nice.
You feel guilty almost, right?
Yes.
Like, is this what I'm supposed to do? I remember the shift whenever I started to primarily work from home. And it was a big shift for me to be like, is this okay? I feel like I'm on the naughty list. Do I need to ask permission from someone that it's okay for me to work from home? It's just crazy how much we get programmed into certain habits, cycles, ways of living, that we don't even realize it. And then when we step out and something kind of shakes us up and we get to experience something different, it's like, oh, this is kind of a nice little reset.
So true.
The other thing I want to share too is kudos to you, not only for you and your family needed that, right? But you're setting a great example at Robin to your team on, hey, when we're talking about the ability to work flexibly, work-life integration, finding your balance in life, that you're living it out as the CEO there. Because I know sometimes it can be something where those words may come out of the mouth of a leader, but if they're not living it, then the rest of the team can be like, okay, I hear you saying it, but I'm not seeing you do it. So I'm not exactly sure I'm comfortable taking time off as I needed to. So kudos to you for doing that.
Thank you. And I think it's so important. Like we try to have, and most of it, we'll touch on both these subjects. I think I try to build work hard, play hard cultures. We work hard here. There's no doubt about it. But you have to have those rests. When you run in a marathon, you can't run at sprint pace for the full 26 miles. Got to change your pace a little bit, or you have to have breaks. And it's definitely the same thing. We have to work hard. Sometimes we have to put in full weekends and late nights and everything else. But at the same time, you do have to have those breaks to restore and make sure that you're really performing as well as it's like athletes. Athletes train really, really hard, but then they have to get a good night's sleep. They have to have breaks and they have to restore. I think that's so important. So really trying to, and the other thing is I'm really lucky to be able to do it. One of the things we'll talk about what I'm about, building great teams is something I'm really passionate about. And I'm lucky enough that we have a fantastic team here that allows me to be able to take some time off like that. Once again, 2 weeks is longer than I would normally take in the course of the summer, but because of my awesome birthday, I allowed myself that this time. But to have a team in place that I don't have to worry, I know they'll handle things. Some big decisions might get to, but that's fine. Like they'll run things. In fact, they solved some things that I was working on that I couldn't solve before I left. It was great, and having me gone allowed them to have some breakthroughs. So it's great seeing that dynamic, and I think that's really healthy too.
I love that. And that perspective too of being able to step away and coming back and it's like they got it solved and that they feel like they had the latitude and that they were empowered to go and solve those things without there being a potential bottleneck of like, well, let's check with Micah first before we, attempt to do this. I love that. So let's go there. We need to start getting into the team thing. You said you're passionate about building teams. We're going to get there in a minute. But the listeners are probably wondering, okay, I'm hearing about this Robin company. Tell me a little bit about that and tell us a little bit more about you, Micah, and your journey of how you got here to Robin. And then we'll start getting into more of the specifics of how you built your team and what you're doing at Robin.
Awesome. Yeah, happy to. So I'm the CEO of Robin Powered. We are a software company that focuses on making workplaces really productive. And we do that by helping companies implement flexible and hybrid work, by really helping automate the physical characteristics of the workplace to make sure that the office is as productive as it can be. We have over 1,500 customers around the world that rely on our software, including many, many, many large brand names, as well as many startups. Some of the most innovative companies in the world use our product to make sure that their workplaces are really productive. So the reason that I got into this space, I'm not the founder of Robin, I'm the CEO. The reason I came into Robin was I've always been really passionate throughout my career about building fantastic teams. I've been in the software and the tech startup world for about 20 years now. I've been at 3 different startups. Robin's number 3 for me. And through that, I've just seen the power of overcoming obstacles, building new markets, and you do that with an amazing group of people. But what I love about building great teams is it's as much art as it is science. And I absolutely love that. And I love that Robin really helps organizations build really productive, cohesive workplaces, especially in a time right now. It's really interesting in the space right now. So we've had 2 things. We've had the rise of remote work since the pandemic. And that's been really interesting as companies have navigated that. And of course, lots of the news cycle around that. And then more recently, the rise of AI. And AI is fundamentally changing how teams work, how different positions do their job. We've had a lot in the news cycle this week alone about AI and how companies are adopting AI. And we see that really impacting teams greatly. So it's a really interesting time to be in this space and a relevant time to be in the space. So a lot of things going on, and happy to continue this conversation as we dive into some of the details of that.
Oh yeah, that's the beauty of this is we don't have a time cap. We're going to keep going. So hopefully the listeners are going to stay with us too. I know they will. But that's the beauty of doing long form podcasts. I'll tell you, just as an aside here is that we are going to get into those 100%. So we're going to talk about how AI is shifting those things, how remote work has really shifted how we're working and what you're seeing there. But I want to lead with this one before we get to those. You brought up that really developing great teams is art and science. Can you tell us more about that?
Yeah, sure. So the amazing thing about teamwork is it's all situational. What works in one situation doesn't necessarily work in the other situation. And I've probably read a lot of the business books out there on teamwork. I love consuming that. But at the same time, I know that there's no Bible when it comes to building great teams at all. You really have to look at the bits and pieces and then also think about how do I apply them situationally to what's going on at the moment. And I think there's a lot of good takeaways out there in the popular press as well as in the academic press also. But that being said, you have to look at what you're trying to accomplish, the culture you're trying to create. I think that's so important. A lot of companies, culture is happenstance. Culture really should be more intentional. What are we trying to build? And is the culture of the organization developed around what we're trying to accomplish within the company? Something that's building security software that's really risk averse or high uptime thing might be very different than something that's got to be super innovative, is very different than a hardware company, a services company versus a software company. All of them need something different. And I think that's what's amazing about building great teams is this intentionality of what we're building. I think a lot of people, the mistakes they make is they just go and kind of hire people in their own likeness, first of all, whether that be academically or thought process or whatever you want to think about when it comes to likeness. And now, what are the gaps I'm trying to fill in? What are we trying to build? What are we trying to accomplish? I was just thinking about this the other day. We had a gap in our team. Our team works really well, but in one place, like I wish that we actually had a little more friction. I wish that we had someone, and I was like, I wish we had a little more friction there. I wish we had someone who created a little more friction. I think we need it. I think it would be healthy for us. That's not something I would normally say, but in this situation, it's kind of what we need. And that's what I love about building great teams. It's so situational and it takes a lot of thought and intentionality. And I think that's something that people don't necessarily do. They fall into team structures, they fall into hiring, and then they also are left with the people that they have and not really thoughtful about, is that what the team needs right now? Is that what the organization needs right now?
I'm noticing some trends here. So you went on an excursion that was, you knew it was going to be fun, but there's going to be some uncomfort there. You're seeing a thundering herd. You're out exposed, in weather, but you knew that this was something that was going to be good for you, and you still pursued it. And you're talking about the need for friction in your team at times, right? And I think it's this theme as CEO that you see that healthy conflict, that healthy struggle is good. It's how we develop and grow in teams. But it sure does seem like, Micah, that, and maybe it's because of external factors, because of what we've been through COVID, that it just has felt like a roller coaster ride over the last 5-6 years, really, in particular, that have we become a little too averse to anything, anytime something becomes uncomfortable, of wanting to kind of go in our shell too much, whether it be personal or professional, you think?
We have. And I got to tell you, I'm going to touch a nerve right here. I don't know if you saw the latest Gallup does an amazing workplace poll around workplace engagement every year. They released the results earlier this spring, right? So if you look at the numbers, it's pretty amazing. So the Gallup poll shows that workplace engagement is highest among remote employees. 31% of remote employees are engaged. If you look at hybrid employees, it's low 20s, 23, 24%. I forget the exact number. And then fully in-person employees, about 19%. So lowest engagement amongst fully in-person employees. What's interesting is if you look at happiness, it's almost the exact, not the exact opposite. Remote employees are the least happy in general. They're the least happy. So what can we take away from this, Jason? What's interesting is back to, it's easy to work from home. It's really easy to work from home. Is that the best thing for most people? That's actually questionable. And the analogy I often use is it's like going to the gym. It's really comfortable for me to sit on the couch and eat potato chips. I got to tell you, I love potato chips. I love sitting on the couch and watching football, especially this time of year, right? But I know that the healthiest thing for me long-term is to get to the gym, get up early, get to the gym. I know long-term that's going to make me the healthiest. It's actually the same thing around careers and working. It's really easy. We get in our rhythm. It's very easy to work remotely, work from home. But is that the best thing for us? And I think this is part of what we're seeing, right? We're seeing this shakeout real time over the past couple of years, and the wars of return to the office or not return to the office. But it's true in general. I don't know if you've read the book Comfort Crisis, and I'm forgetting the author right now, but it's really on this topic, which is hey, have we become too coddled in general? And overall, that impacts our happiness, that impacts our professional development, and impacts all sorts of different things. There's personally, obviously, I see some truth to that. I think that you need to have adversity in your life. You need, I mean, the right amount. Like clearly, you don't want to have too much. That can be highly damaging. But you really need some adversity in your life, both professionally. To help grow as a person, to grow professionally, that is good. And in fact, we'll get into it. I think that's actually really important when you come to AI stuff, which we've definitely learned ourselves over the past couple of years, and we'll get to that shortly.
Yeah, easy isn't always best. You're so right on that, Micah. And there's another book. We're going to get the book you mentioned. We'll make sure we get those put in the notes for the listeners so that they can check it out. It makes me think of another book, The Anxious Generation, which kind of touches on the same subject.
Comfort Crisis basically touches on a lot of the same topics as Anxious Generation. They're very same things.
I figured so. And it's just this, and when you become insulated by it, it's hard to get out of it because it's comfortable. I think that's the tough part, is just like you said, like, I know I shouldn't be sitting on the couch eating potato chips, but damn, these potato chips are really good. And it's kind of nice just sitting and resting instead of going and make my muscles hurt and exercising and going to eat some Brussels sprouts instead. Right. But you have to make those choices. You have to make a commitment, and you have to follow through on the execution of that. So that was really surprising to me what you said about the study. I hadn't heard that yet, that despite remote employees showing in the survey with Gallup the highest engagement, they're showing the lowest happiness levels. And I'll tell you that there's got to be something around that in terms of how important it is to be connected with other people. Right?
Yeah, got to be a piece of it. And what's interesting too is, as you probably have followed, and Gallup's been doing this survey for a long, long time. And I wonder, they've always showed this very high connectedness between performance and engagement at work. But I wonder, like, we certainly know that someone's overall happiness definitely impacts their performance at work too. And if we're starting to see this disconnect between engagement and happiness, will that ultimately impact performance too? That's a question I have in mind. And I think part of why we see these battles going on and in office versus remote, and what we found is, this is one of the reasons that we have our company and we have our software in general, is that what the academic studies have found that the middle ground is actually the best. About half-time hybrid is, for most people, most organizations, about the best. About half the time in the office, it allows you flexibility to get stuff done at home, to take care of the kids, that kind of stuff. At the same time, it allows you to create the connection, to get some routine in your life. We know that routines are important to people. Even just the commute is important. I talked about the importance of my commute earlier, it's my thinking time, it's my processing time. So academic studies show about half the time in the office is actually optimal for performance. So it's interesting to see, but the problem is, doing anything halfway is hard, right? So it's easy to be sort of at home, or it's easy to be fully in the office. It's harder to manage, I'm in the office half the time. And that's what we see a lot of organizations struggle with, how to get that right, how to get flexible or hybrid right. A lot of companies definitely are struggling with that.
And it makes sense that would be the sweet spot right there in the middle of the hybrid. Because there's no doubt that there are certain skills in terms of your emotional intelligence, in terms of your social intelligence, where the development of those skills takes on a whole new level when you can actually be with people, practicing it, getting real-time feedback, reading nonverbal cues from other people, stuff that you can't get just in virtual meetings, because you can't be in virtual meetings all the time. But if you're swimming in the waters with people, you start to develop those things. As an example, you and I were talking before we hit record that landline phones now are starting to come back. There's a Silicon Valley company. I can't think of it off the top of my head, but I'll have to go find it. We'll make sure we get it put in the notes for this episode. But for people, particularly of my demographic and yours too, where you have kids who may not be of the age yet where it makes sense for them to have a cell phone, right? But maybe they're old enough to where they can be home alone, and you want to be able to give them a call if you're out and you need to touch base with them or just check on them to make sure that they're okay. Well, the other thing that this company found is that this generation of kids, they text so much, they haven't really been developing as many oral communication skills and the nuance and all the stuff that it takes within the linguistics and just communication. We take it for granted because we just do it all the time. But a lot of younger kids, these younger generations, they didn't have the types of experiences that were molding and developing that. Micah, I bet for you, and just like for me at the time, when we had a landline phone, I didn't think, oh, I'm developing skills here. Whenever I'm picking this up, I don't know who's calling. And all of a sudden I need to, okay, let me access my lexicon here of my language to make sure that on the, in the moment here, I'm like, oh, this is who this is. Let me ask them an appropriate question. What's the next socially appropriate thing I need to do? Oh, let me jot down
You
a
had to
note.
talk
My
to
parents
someone's
aren't here.
parents. When you called your friend, you're calling your best friend. You would have to talk to their parents before you got through to
Yes,
them.
in the moment thinking that requires social intelligence that may, require you to pivot or do things, put you in kind of uncomfortable situations. I don't know who's calling, who knows what this call is about. And then you had to you had to figure it out basically along the way. I think a lot of what you're addressing here, this theme of like easy isn't always best, is it's good for us to struggle and muddle through things sometimes, right? And this is going to segue now into the AI discussion too, I think now that AI is coming into the picture here for a lot of us, both in our personal and professional lives, we now have a tool, a thing that can already, even if in its infancy level stages of maturity, there's a lot of things that we can offload to it that we don't struggle through. But what might be the cost of that? I'm curious some of your reactions, the way that you, particularly for you, of a CEO of a technology company, are thinking about AI right now.
Yeah, the cost of it, first of all, it's an incredible tool. It's the most transformational technology leap that I've seen in my lifetime. And it will fundamentally change how we do a whole bunch of things. Is it can do everything and everything else is part of the hype cycle right now? Absolutely. But that being said, the hype is real. There is still much it can do. It's going to fundamentally transform the way we do a whole bunch of different stuff in ways that we don't even begin to understand right now. So for us as a company, a software company, mid-sized software company, we need to make sure that we leverage it as much. I'm in a competitive business. A lot of your listeners are probably in competitive businesses. We need to adopt as quickly as possible. And one of the things that I was finding around the company is, and we're pretty good. I think we are leading edge in adoption of AI tools, as well as embedding AI within our software application. But I noticed that we weren't as fast as the AI native startups. And this is one of the things I found, Jason, necessity is the mother of invention. So on purpose, we've had to go through and say, hey, where do we need to be doing it? Maybe we need to change roles. Maybe we need to eliminate positions in some places to really speed up our adoption. Because what we found is, this is what we're seeing on those AI native startups. I mean, the kind of talk around Silicon Valley is, when are you going to have the first 1-person or sub 10-person unicorn, $1 billion plus valuation company with single digit number of employees? And the reason first of all, they can do it. They're learning those skills natively. Second is the time pressure of scaling a startup is always the big thing, and the people pressure and everything else. If I can do that without all that friction and take care of a bunch of roles, just use AI to do it, then I'm going to do it. And I think for most mid-sized and large what I've seen is actually the smallest companies are doing really well adopting AI. The largest companies, the biggest of the big tech, is doing a great job because they're deploying billions of dollars tackling it. It's everyone in the middle is getting squeezed right now. They're the laggards. So what I've decided was, in our organization, it's we're not going to be the laggard. We are going to be an absolute leader here. But it requires a lot of people being uncomfortable in making that transition. And it's not an easy thing to do. What we see is, so two big things in the news cycle just recently this week. First is that the MIT study came out showing that 95% of AI projects fail. By the way, if you look at the details of that data, it's not right at all. It shows headline driver, but really a bunch of these were pilots. There are little things people were trying. They really were not people diving deep in it, because we know in a bunch of areas AI is transformational. The second was a Stanford study that came out that shows the deep impact that AI is having in two specific jobs. So first of all, software developers, right? That entry-level software developers are having a much harder time finding jobs, because those jobs have dried up, because that's what AI replaces. I don't need coders anymore. I need software engineers. I need deep thinkers that are architecting software. I don't need people just to write code anymore, because AI writes code really well, and in customer service. So I think what we're seeing is that impact right now in some jobs, but the fact of the matter is AI impacting every job. And what's really interesting is it's what I call shifting sands, is that for every person running businesses right now, the sands are shifting underneath your feet in ways that they have never shifted before. It's a really uncomfortable time to be leading a business right now because of that.
There's so much good stuff there that you just shared. Let's start with this one when it comes to it, because I'm hearing this a lot from leaders that are trying to figure their way out through this. What were the first steps maybe that you took as CEO once you knew, like, okay, this is real, we got to start figuring this out? What did your playbook start to look like to start developing an AI strategy at Robin?
So first of all, still definitely working through that. So 2 years ago, when we saw the 2.5 years ago, I mean, ChatGPT is almost 3 years out now, right? But let's say 2.5 years ago, after it was like, oh, cool, party trick and everything else, but you start seeing the real applications of it. We said, all right, we really need to use this in a real way. And because to the obvious things like developing code, customer success, we started using it that ways. Copywriting, I mean, developing marketing content, those were obvious, easy ones. And then we said, all right, so that was sort of like 2023 for most folks. And then 2024, we said, all right, no, seriously, we need to fully adopt all of this stuff. We're all in on this, deploy it to our application. We need to use more tools. And what I'd say is we made some really good strides there, and especially with the rise of AI agents. That was about a year ago now. We saw tools like Cursor, Windsurf get really good at developing contextual code, especially for companies like ours that have significant product footprints already. Agents all of a sudden started getting really good about writing contextual code, and that was a game changer. All of a sudden, we saw this 20 or 30% increase in productivity for engineers go to 200 to 300%. We said, yeah, that was about a year ago. I was like, all right, this is real. We need to make that transformation, as well as how do we develop these tools within our own platform to make our own users of our platform even more successful. But what I saw was, once again, we were really good at leading that, but we weren't as good as we could be. And if I looked at AI native companies, they were definitely ahead of us. So this is where we had to create some uncomfortableness. We had to make the difficult choice. If I told you, like, necessity is the mother of invention, in places where we saw we were lagging, or in places where we said, you know what, we can replace this function with AI. We had to make the difficult decision to eliminate roles, Jason. And what I found was sort of just telling people, hey, you got to make the change, setting a strategic objective. You'll get movement, but you won't really get the transformation. You won't really get the full benefit of it. And we see companies are doing this. We see some companies kind of headline, they're making a full transformation. So we've really done more of trying to follow their lead, which is making a full transformation to an AI native company. But we had to get really uncomfortable in doing that, having the not only hard conversations, but actually eliminating positions to make the move over. Because we found as long as you had people whose jobs were doing certain things, the incentive to move over to AI is just not as strong, right? If people's roles depended on doing certain tasks. But if you eliminate some of those roles, which is a really, really hard decision to make, but once again, we all exist in competitive environments. If I'm not going to do it, other people will. We all have the next startups that are trying to take away our market position. We have big companies investing billions of dollars. And I saw it's like literally as a squeeze on everyone else. I said, we're not going to get squeezed. We are not going to get squeezed. We're going to make the uncomfortable, hard decisions to make sure that we move faster. And we see it moving now, right? We see like people are adopting AI tools out of necessity, and it's making us better. It's making us faster. It's making us more productive. We're embedding in our product out of necessity, and it's making us better. It's making our product better. But I think you have to have the necessity there. If you don't, it's very easy to keep doing what you've always done. It's the comfort thing that we talked about before.
Exactly. Yeah, that's exactly right. And I'd have to imagine the other piece of this too, I think that's really important to touch on, that I'd love to hear your perspective on, is you care about everyone on the team. And you probably also see, if we don't do this now, and yes, it's going to be tough to eliminate these few positions, if we don't do that, which is going to help us spark and get our stuff together, this may lead to a whole bunch of other, like if everyone's just staying comfortable, this could potentially lead to a snowball effect of like we're falling further and further behind as a company, which means further cuts. And so I would have to imagine from your perspective too, and those of the other executive leaders, as hard as it is to start with those few cuts that you have to do in order to get things started, to create the necessity to be like, okay, we have to figure this out. If you didn't have that, that it could potentially lead to bigger cuts later on if everyone's just staying comfortable and you're falling behind as a company to your competitors. Is that right?
100% correct, Jason. And listen, you talked about my passion is building great teams. You spend all this time hiring people, building a fantastic culture. The last thing you want to do is eliminate. I mean, it just eats sleepless nights, you name it. It's the last thing I want to do. But I have to take that long view and that bigger picture view that you just discussed, because I know that if I don't, that we will fall further behind. And we can talk about broader ethics and the other implications of AI. The fact of the matter is, those are all great things to talk about academically, but I'm trying to run a business that's trying to compete and survive out there. And if I don't make the difficult decisions, and I think we're at the early, like I said, I know we're in the early end of making these decisions, but I also know I have to make them for us to be able to keep our leg up and to be able to continue to win in the market that we're in. Otherwise, we will run the risk of falling behind. But they're hard decisions to make. But this is back to the uncomfortable thing we talked about. Listen, decisions don't come to me because they're easy. They come to me because they're hard. The company should, like the other leaders and managers throughout the organization, should be making the easy decisions. If they're easy, they'll be making them. The hard ones, that's what I'm in my seat for.
And communication's such an important part of that, right? Even when you have to come to hard decisions, the communication part is so important, because you want to care for that person. You want to do it the right way, even if the time has ended, and set them up for success. And then hopefully, if they're an ambassador for the company, be like, yeah, even though I had to be let go, that's a fantastic place to work, that they'd share with their friends and family, or that there would be another future opportunity where maybe in the future it would make sense for them to come back. Walk us through, because I am hearing this from some leaders too, that are like, I'm just really struggling with how to communicate when we're in these tough spots of balancing yes, we're optimistic about the future with AI, but in the short term, it might mean that there's some difficult decisions, that there might be some displacement of roles and positions because of that. Can you just kind of walk us through what did the communication chain kind of look like for you to handle this in a great way at Robin, and to continue to maintain the culture and help people during those challenging transitions?
Yeah. So first of all, wish we could always say we get this right. I think we do as good a job as you possibly can, but when you eliminate positions, there's no good way to have those conversations. But I focus on openness and transparency, and I think that's the best way to do it. And let me walk you through this. So what we were doing was we were seeing how AI was impacting the organization really over the course of the year. We could see where we were able to eliminate roles, kinds of onesies, twosies, as we're working through this and seeing the effect it was having. And literally, there's no department in the organization that's not touched by this. I think people think, oh, well, my department, no. AI can seriously impact and should be impacting every single department within the organization. And I saw this happening, Jason, as I looked out over the next year. I said, it was over 4th of July. 4th of July, I went on a hike by myself. Once again, I needed that thinking time. I was on that hike on 4th of July, and I said, I just see how this is playing out. It's going to continue to be this like onesie twosie thing as we figure out what positions, and at the same time we're adopting well, but we're not adopting, I think, as fast as we could be or should be. And meanwhile, to your point, it creates this culture of fear. All right, like, what about my job, and is that job next? And I said, you know what, we've just got to rip the Band-Aid off on this. We just got to make a decision, go in deep on this fully, and be very transparent about that to the organization. So that's what we did. The following week, I said, we got to transform ourselves into an AI native company. That means we have to make a really hard choice, and we're going to eliminate some roles now. And those might have been the roles that I would have been doing 6 months from now or 9 months from now. But I said, you know what, we just got to take care of this at once. We got to fully, instead of dipping our toe or our leg or whatever the right analogy is into the water, we had to go full. We had to jump in off the deep end and go full in. Instead, we were kind of going this slow immersion technique is what we were doing. And we had to break that. And I was very transparent about the reason why. This is why. This is what we want to be on the other side. And we allowed people to opt out. I said, if this type of organization doesn't seem right to you, and we did. We had some people opt out. So if this AI native company doesn't seem like the right thing for you, that's okay. Let us know, and you can opt out. And we had some people opt out as part of that. But I think that transparency, certainly I'm sure people didn't like what we had to do, Jason. But for me, at least we know we're super open about what we're doing, why we're doing it, what things we're going to look like on the other side. Everyone, some people got really excited about that vision. That's great. That's those ones we knew that were good fit for what we're trying to build, and some people weren't. But that was great. They opted out or whatever, and then we can move on and build the future of the organization. And I think that's such a healthy thing to do. And a healthy, we talked about this adversity and getting out of your comfort zone. I think it's important for companies to do that on a regular basis. Otherwise, you just get caught in the motion that is doing the same thing that you've always been doing, which in a time like this is particularly dangerous given the amount of change that's happening.
Especially, yeah, I think it was Richard Foster at Harvard or Yale who was saying, I think it's like by 2028, I want to say the percentage was like somewhere between 40 to 60% at least of the Fortune 500 companies will no longer, it's either be in existence or be in the Fortune 500. That's how rapidly the change is happening. But I love that you have brought up values and identity into this and culture, because you even use that as, this is who we have to become now. And so we want to let you know and be transparent that this is the direction we're going. Do you want to be on board with this? And if not, you can opt out. I think that's such a great approach. And you think about it, it's not all too different from a lot of the other decisions we talked about that you referenced earlier about trying to choose to be healthy. I do CrossFit. And so I'm not going to ask, act, here on the show that like I'm this unbelievable CrossFit athlete, but I'm not too bad for 45, right? Well, one of the things in CrossFit that they often talk about, they're big on the nutrition aspect of what you should be eating and what you shouldn't and how it relates to your performance. And one of the things at the one I go to is they teach you this phrase. It's just a simple cognitive trick of saying that I am an athlete. And then asking yourself, would an athlete eat this? Identity formation, right? That so much power comes from our mindset and the way that our inner dialogue of, do I identify with that or don't I? In certain instances, like if I'm an athlete, am I going to be going to McDonald's several days a week? Probably not, right? And so you have to make some hard decisions that, hey, I've been eating McDonald's, but if I'm going to be an athlete and I want to be the best athlete that I can be, it's going to make some tough decisions that I have to make. It's going to be some commitments. I'm going to have to follow through on those. And I love that there's this identity formation component of this where you're bringing in the culture and values of the organization, but you're also saying, and you said it near the end there, that if you're a business that isn't like reviewing those probably like at least every year and thinking about who are we, where are we headed, where should we be headed, how is this, what are the things that may be necessary to change in terms of the culture, in terms of who we are in order to get from here to there, to make sure we're still sustaining, to make sure that we're still around, that we don't go under, that we aren't part of that 40 to 60% that's going to be gone in the Fortune 500, in the next 2 years. And I love that you're grounding it in a lot of that identity and then asking people, it's okay if this isn't part of the identity that you want to be, but then it's time for us to start thinking about an exit strategy and then support you in finding the next opportunity somewhere, because the path that we have to be on as a company and for everyone to still have opportunities moving into the future is we have to move this direction. I love that approach that you're taking.
It's so important. And like I said, it's amazing. You look at, it's so apparent that most business leaders are not making a decision. The large companies are, right? Google had a massive wake-up call. OpenAI took a bunch of their initial research, turned it into a groundbreaking platform, and Google's like, my gosh, we have to make a change. So Google's been just trying to transform Google as quickly as possible over the past couple of years. You see Facebook, I mean, the mega tech is doing that incredibly well, right? You see that small companies, AI native companies, are doing it because they don't know any other way. They're just getting started in this world, and they have these tools at their disposal. But everyone else is sort of muddling along, trying to figure out, picking up the obvious things, but not making the super hard decisions right now. The super hard decisions are going to get forced on them in real short order. I'd rather be ahead of that curve than behind it.
So that's really fascinating what you said there, that like that, do you want hard now or you want hard later? Like you're saying, I'm hearing you unequivocally, take the hard now figure it out, and then you're going to reap the rewards later on.
Well, hard now, if you do hard later, it's going to be forced on you and you're going to be in reactive mode. I never want to be in reactive mode, right? I always want to be proactive when I'm building a business. I don't want to be in reactive mode because then you're in a defensive position and typically then harder to defend your spot in that world. I'd much rather be ahead of the curve.
That's so good. Great advice there for leaders who are listening today. Let's talk about, so we've talked about, yes, there's some challenging things that are coming with AI, but now let's get into the positive, because there is a lot of positive. What's some of the positive already that you're seeing with what you're doing, Robin?
Amazing. I mean, you become so much more productive, right? So this is what's incredible. I mean, first, let's talk about software engineers. You can focus on solving the real problems and building things rather than cranking out lots of code. I mean, it's pretty amazing. The problems our team's able to solve, the speed at which they're able to do it, the way they're able to create product is amazing. Now it changes the whole product development cycle for software companies. That's another thing we're working through. The way design and product management and engineering work together is changing but that being said, it's amazing. Companies, even our company, mid-sized company, we have hundreds of thousands of daily, of monthly users. We have a big platform, we have a big footprint, but we can develop new features so much faster than we could before. I mean, this is incredible. Sales folks, I mean, sort of the thing most salespeople, and some people like it, as I'll say, but things like cold calling, cold outreach, that stuff, like the tools to be able to personalize outreach for salespeople, it allows you to focus on the stuff you like to do, which is bring people along, show them the value of your product. You can scale that in ways you never could scale it before. Customer service, once again, most customer service people like solving hard problems. The kind of the daily stuff is not what gets them super excited. AI can solve that stuff for all of us. I mean, so it does. There is this talk track of unleashing kind of human creativity and productivity. AI can do a ton of that, and I think we're in the throes of figuring out where and how. And there is disruption that occurs because of it, but we're going through that disruption because of the power of the tools that we have at our disposal right now, which is pretty amazing, right? And that's why we had to make the jump. We had to make the jump because it's like, holy cow, look at the world that's in front of us. Look what we can accomplish by really fully adopting these tools. This is incredible. Why would we want to do things the old way? We're doing things the old way just because that's what we're used to doing. And we had to break that cycle, which is why we had to go through some of that pain to get there. But wow, the world on the other side is incredible.
It probably, as a software company, because I used to be in a couple software companies, it has to feel almost like a pipe dream, because it used to be, from the sales team members' perspectives and then customers' perspectives, it's like, how long is it going to take to ship some new features? Like, we put in a request for this, it's really important. And the development roadmap is like, well, we might be able to get to this by the end of the quarter kind of thing. And like now, like you haven't said this explicitly, but it's probably something where it's like, we may be able to have that ready like in a week or 2 weeks or something like that.
It's clear. I never want to make any promises depending on features and everything, all sorts of things. There are still lots of potential blockers out there. But yeah, we had a customer come up with a critical issue, 11th hour, literally, we're supposed to go live the next morning. This was the night before. Oh my God, we forgot this critical thing. In 2 hours, our engineers using AI tools had deployed the new solution. It was a new feature request. It wasn't a bug fix. It wasn't like that. It was something they had forgotten in the requirements, and we were able to roll it out within a couple hours. Now we can't do that all of the time. There are still lots of things, but the tools really make so much possible, and it allows companies of our size, of real scale, once again, hundreds of thousands of monthly users, millions of yearly users. This is scale. Roll out features like we're an early stage startup. We can get things deployed very quickly. That's amazing. Marketing, you name it, the customized stuff we can create now is incredible, right? I mean, you can never do that. You had to create one size fits all. Now we can do customized campaigns on all sorts of different attributes. I mean, it really is amazing. I think that's what we're seeing is so for the people that are adopting, wow, it allows you to be much more effective at your job. It allows you to build things. I mean, I think that's what attracts people to working at organizations like ours, like startups. They should be builders, and it allows you to become a builder. I was actually talking to one of my friends who's in construction, and he's having a little trouble figuring. He runs a construction business. He's having a little trouble figuring it all out, like the AI thing and everything. So I said, imagine this, turn of the last century, 1900. You used to have teams of people out there with shovels and everything, digging foundations and digging ditches and digging roads and everything else. It's like, but then all of a sudden the steam shovel came along. And now all of a sudden you're able to do the work of 100 people with one person. And that's what AI is doing for white collar work, is all of a sudden we can do the work of this mechanization that happened in a whole bunch of other functions. AI really kind of it's that fundamental a transformation. All of a sudden we have power equipment and we can do so much more with it. It's really an incredible time.
And to think about it, the lifeblood of every organization is sales, right? Your revenue operations, making sure that sales are getting done. I would have to imagine your confidence, if you're in sales at Robin, knowing and seeing the results you're getting from AI, the conversations that you have out in the market, of your ability to go speed the market with new things that are transformative, things that, hey, when you're a salesperson, you're an account executive, you're getting information back from prospects that's saying, well, here's our use case. Here's the things that we would need it to do, that we would want from you. And to be able to bring that back to the team and to be like, oh, potentially this could be something that we would have ready. Yeah, of course, like in the next few weeks or something like that. This is completely hypothetical on my end. But I'm just saying, like, you can see how this big picture vision you're talking about of how AI transforms business, you start to dig into those things. And it's like, it's really giving your salespeople confidence of like, yeah, when I'm hearing things in the market, when I'm hearing things from prospects, if we can't do that today, might this be something that we could do next month? Right? That's the kind of like transformative change in that whole development cycle for like a technology company like yours, where, man, if you're in sale, if you're a sales leader right now, and maybe you're in a different industry, you need to hit up Micah, join his team at Robin, because it's like this could be really, really transformative and exciting.
Well, especially for the right salespeople. So I will say there's a little bit of a paradox that's developed, Jason. So this is interesting. What you said is right, but there's a really, really strong asterisk associated with that. So our ability to build new features and expand the footprint of the platform has expanded greatly. We've been able to accelerate that manyfold over the past 2 years. But that creates a challenge for salespeople. Is instead of being narrowly focused and learning one thing I do really well, all of a sudden my aperture is opened a lot. And the conversations I have, how I deploy that, how I can talk to customers about that changes dramatically. So what we actually have found is we're finding, to your point about new features we've rolled out, everything else, it's actually been a little bit of a challenge of getting the sales team to be able to keep up. It's really hard to keep up with it all, because now all of a sudden I have to learn a lot more. And we're seeing this in general too, across, we're a B2B software platform. We're seeing lots more platforms because it's so much easier. These tools have allowed us to build the functionality. You used to have lots of very narrowly focused point solutions. And instead, you're seeing many more platforms develop now, because the tools have allowed us to do AI tools over the past 2 years. But the sales team's ability to keep up with that, position the product appropriately, given all the other products out there, that actually is this whole new frontier. I've come up with like 5 ideas in the past 6 months for new AI tools to help salespeople sell in this new AI-enabled world, because I talked about shifting sands. These are one of these shifting sands. We're starting to see the impacts of AI in ways that we never, ever could have predicted before. And this is just one of them. But on the sales front, that's an interesting one, that it gives them more confidence, but also can be really confusing, give them a lot more they have to understand, know how to position and how to keep up with that. We're actually using AI tools to try to address that need, including a bunch of custom ones that we created for ourselves, because now all of a sudden we've identified that need.
That's fascinating. I'm glad you corrected me on that. I would never have considered that, but you're right. And it's one of the things, I can't remember which paper I saw this from. I want to say it may have been from MIT a few months ago, that was talking about one of the concerns is that AI is already good enough at so many things. Could it potentially go so fast that we struggle to keep up? Could it induce, even though it's going faster and taking certain things off our plate or solving things, that it's creating bottlenecks in other places, is something to start preparing for? And you just gave a perfect example of that because things are getting developed and deployed feature sets, new capabilities of your software, that it can be a challenge for your sales leaders to keep up with all of that and to be able to give accurate responses, answers, and insights to prospects and out in the market, because it's like, oh, this may have been the right answer 2 weeks ago. I need to get the new answer for now, for where we are today.
Right. And meanwhile, we've developed 4 new things on other parts of the platform. And did I learn all of them? Did I internalize them? Did I think about how do I position them against the competition? Because that's changed as soon as we develop this new stuff. All that is the salespeople learn. So we see that that's a great second order effect. These are what I call the AI second order effects, which we're all learning right now. Another one is product development cycle I talked about earlier. Is product management in a software company or any technology company is focused on going out to the market, figuring out requirements. Because it took so long to develop code, I then develop a really rigorous set of requirements. I then give them to the engineers. The engineers would write to those requirements. We'd then go back and do some user testing. But now writing code is AI tools write it very quickly, and it's basically costless to do. So my iteration cycle is so much quicker. So the way product and engineering work together is completely broken compared to what it used to be. And we're all learning. The companies like us that are at the vanguard of this are figuring out what that looks like. Some teams are getting rid of product entirely. I don't think that's the right thing to do at all. But how product and design and engineering work together, because this whole like very linear development cycle is gone. It's like these iteration cycles are so quick now because I can spin up code so quickly. It just changes the whole dynamic and how the teams work together and really what jobs look like. Like the very nature of what some positions look like has changed literally in the last 6 months.
And that's the speed that we're dealing with now, right? It's like the change I think that's one of the other big themes I'm hearing from you today is like, if you're an organization that's like, well, we're just going to take our time to kind of feel this out and figure out where it's going, you're going to get left behind. Like if you're used to taking 2 years to develop a strategy around something and deploy it, don't, because in 2 years, who knows what anything is going to look like. Like that's way too long. You've got to speed up those cycles of iteration I'm hearing you talk about. And also a phrase I'm hearing a lot more, I'd love to get your 2 cents on it, is in order to learn fast, you have to fail faster.
You got to be out there. You got to be out there doing it. You absolutely do. And it's so true, Jason. That's the thing. I hear some leaders say, well, the technology is changing. I just want to see it level out a little bit, and then we'll think about a strategy. We'll adopt it. What I've found is that, A, you're not going to build the access. First of all, the tools right now are groundbreaking and will change the course of your business. So first of all, there's no reason to wait. It's not like the things aren't adequate right now. 2 years ago, they weren't, but in the past year, things have come so far away, so far along that you're missing a massive opportunity if you're not adopted. Second is, as things continue to change quickly, you need to be in the arena. It's sort of the Teddy Roosevelt quote, right? Which is man in the arena. You need to be in there doing it and learning it. If you're not, then as they become more mainstream, as they continue to get better, you're going to miss that, because we will see the innovation cycle, like it'll start to level out. We're not going to have these massive leaps and bounds that we're having right now in productivity, but that's okay. You're going to have learned the tools, and then you'll really be able to fire for effect and you'll really be able to get the most out of this stuff. If you're not out there trying right now, then you're missing a massive opportunity. That's my take on it, and certainly been our team's take on it.
How have you gone about, and this is something you've already established it in your culture, but who is really helping lead and guide that when it gets down into the different departments? Who's helping with the speed and the deployment of getting up to speed on figuring out, here's what we're doing with AI. Let's go. Let's get moving on this. I know you're setting the vision for that. Can you just take us through pragmatically kind of what that looks like in order to be able to operate at that speed and that level? What's it take to do that?
Yeah, it's a great question. I'd say all of our leadership team is definitely all in on this. But with a couple, I'll call it a couple specific folks. So first of all, our CTO is incredible. As he's one of the founders of the company, he definitely is leading it, and not only leading by telling, but leading by example, developing tools himself, showing them, putting them in, helping guide the team to seeing what's truly possible. I mean, he really is going out there as an advocate, as somebody who is not only telling but also showing. Like he's just done an incredible and is keeping us at the forefront of all this stuff, from a B MCP protocols to A, building all our own agents, connecting with other companies' agents, you name it. He's on the vanguard of all those things. So that's been great from a software development standpoint. As far as AI tool adoption across the organization, I'm going to give you a really surprising one, and one I'm so happy about. Our chief people officer, our head of HR, has been leading this. We had, I'd say she was a little bit of and the reason why it really comes back to that talent. If talent is so important to us, and talent in AI talent is the thing that's going to really build our company, transform our organization, the type of transformation we need. She saw that and she's like, why would I be doing anything else? I'm doing is sort of superfluous to this. And then I want to lead by example. So she's out there building GPTs herself. She's doing all of that. She's driving our big part of our AI strategy as far as tooling, what we're doing across the organization, Gemini versus GPT, and the different Claude, the different tools that we're adopting, leading by example. Once again, building stuff ourselves. We have people on teams throughout the company going to her and say, hey, I need help. I'm building this GPT. Can you help me build it right now? It was like, she actually sent me a prompt the other day for something I was trying to do. She's like, here, try this prompt. That was linked to the files for something I was trying to create. I love that, Jason. It's so important because, once again, as much as we think about AI as technology, it really has to be the center of our talent strategy. And she has made it front and center of our talent strategy. So really excited with the way that she is leading the organization. It's unlike when you on the surface, it seems like an unlikely place, but then when you think about it, it makes so much sense. But I got to tell you, I'm super lucky. I bet you I'm in the 1% of companies that I have a head of HR who is leading our AI agenda.
You are very lucky. And let me tell you, we have a lot of CHROs and chief people officers who do listen to the show. And so there you go, folks. If you aren't doing that type of stuff, do it. You're hearing directly from a CEO in a technology company that's very successful, that's saying, I love that my chief people officer is doing this and sending me prompts and sending me GPTs that she's creating. That's absolutely incredible. The other thing, we got to get her to go to SHRM and speak about that, right? Get her on SHRM. Let's get her into hacking HR. That's incredible that she's taking leadership on that.
Certainly. And here's an interesting thing too. Like I love the mindset shift, because most chief people officers really focus, when they think about their nature of their role, they think about the talent agenda, but that's a little fluffy, a little hard to kind of nail down and everything. So really the hard things that they look at are things like employee retention, turnover. Those are the things they look at. But what I just talked to you about is we literally are having to retool our entire companies because the nature of what we need is changing. So in a world like that, maybe retention and turnover, there's places where we have to go through some turnover to get the type of talent that we need across the organization. And so when I have a chief people officer that's focused on AI at the top of her agenda, she also realized she actually was one of the ones who was talking to me and saying, hey, Micah, like, I think we need to think about it. Do we have the right team in place for this company? We both see what type of company we need to be in 2 years to be truly successful in this market. Do we have the talent in place? She was really pushing that agenda. And I think when you get someone who's getting deep into AI that way, they start thinking that way, which is really important versus, all right, I just got to hit my 15% turnover target this year and my 85% retention. And that's what, no, that's not what's going to help me in a world like this. That's not what's on top of my mind right now in this world.
You're exactly right. It's the big difference between lagging indicators and leading indicators, like shifting more on the leading indicator. Where are we going to drive new value? Where are we going to drive transformation? One of the things that's really fascinating that ties into this that I heard, it was earlier this year, Matt Burns, the CEO and founder of Atlas Copilot, which is an AI company. He was the first one that I heard about that was talking about chief people officers, CHROs, working directly with IT in the programming of GPTs to make sure that they're imbued with the values and norms of the culture so that they comport themselves just like any other team member or employee in a way that's appropriate within the culture. And I thought that is fascinating to think about HR, working with IT as you're building these agents, because the agents are employees, right? We have to start thinking that way. That's one of the things is, yes, it might be a tool, but the more that it grows and expands its knowledge base, the more it may specialize in certain roles and really become a master, that it may be have a seat at the table in meetings. It may start to develop over time its own opinions, its own perspectives based on the data, and be like, well, actually, I think this might be the better approach or something that we need to think about. And that was the first time that really got me thinking about the agents as, even though they are primarily a tool right now, who knows where that point is? Will we get to a point in the not too distant future where they truly are almost like autonomous employees within the organization, just like our human employees are?
We're almost there right now. I mean, that's certainly the way we think. That's certainly the way we think about them. We think about people overseeing multiple agents that are doing work. They're double checking their work. They're looking at it. They're assigning them tasks. I mean, certainly in some functions, that's definitely how we see it right now. And I think we'll see that continue to expand to other functions. Certainly. I mean, once again, the stuff is moving so quickly. Certainly, I think that's months across a broad swath of functions, Jason. And back to the CHRO, CPOs working with IT, we talked about before, and we certainly see controversially, some organizations did this earlier this year. They said, all right, before you hire for any roles, you've got to prove to me that AI can't do this role. And I know that was a controversial thing. I kind of took a step further and we said, no hiring at all. You got to do with AI. Like, there's no discussion to be had. And back to that's what prompted our CPO to make the switch. We were doing some hiring earlier this year, and she said, hey, listen, like, we might need a contract recruiter for it. And I said, no, like, I know that AI can help us with this problem. And she said, you know what? You're right. Challenge accepted. Let me see what we can figure out. And that's what really started. And she saw it. And then that power was like, holy cow, this is a whole new way of doing things, which, by the way, now we've seen things come full circle. I'm talking about second order effects. Now there's AI tools to allow you to apply for jobs. And that is crazy. So we knew this was going to happen, but we're seeing this day right now, which is both potentially fake applicants as well as real applicants. But now their resumes have been optimized,
making themselves look like experts, hitting the right keywords and stuff like that, being able to get out 500 applications a day.
So we're seeing that big time right now. So how do we do that? Same thing with content for marketing. Like, if you flood content out there. So now these are the second order effects, fake videos. Like, so, all right, how did this is back to, I don't know. What do things look like? Do you recruit in person again? I don't know. I mean, we're going to have to see posting jobs anymore, everyone. And that's a change we've really seen the past couple months. That's changed so rapidly that all of a sudden the proliferation of tools to apply for jobs have gone out there. AI tools. Now, all of a sudden you're getting thousands of applicants within minutes of posting jobs. It's crazy land out there.
Have you ever heard of John Sinet, the futurist?
No.
I'll send you a link to his stuff on LinkedIn. He's one of the most respected future strategists in the world. He's based out of Dubai, but he travels all around the world to do keynotes. A big thing right now he's talking about is IRL in real life. That he, as he looks into the future, he thinks there's going to be almost a counter reaction to this. And I like the word you used. A secondary effect is, yes, we're going to continue on this path with AI. We're going to get better at a lot of stuff. It's going to start doing a lot of things. But there's going to be things now that we are also going to say, we won't let this be touched by AI. This is something that is always going to be a human connection touch point, something that we will do the reason this is coming to mind for me is what you're talking about when it comes to the way that you're doing talent acquisition. As a reaction to this, we're not going to probably do away with applicant tracking systems, right? But is that whole candidate experience, that whole talent acquisition process, is it going to be transformed and reimagined where maybe you go back to there are certain types of more human touch points injected because of the proliferation of the digital experience that, hey, you know what? If we add some of these human touches in here for certain types of roles or functions or with certain types of candidates that are far enough along that we're like, this is really important, that we're going to lean more into the IRL as John puts it, the in real life stuff. Just like with concerts, like with the humanities, it's like, yes, I can hop on Spotify and I can listen to an all AI band. Yes, I could hop on a GPT and craft my own song, but I want to hear from the actual artist. I want the in real life experience. And that's what made me think about that, is you talking about just within talent acquisition.
I definitely think that's the way we're going. So in-person interviews are so much more important. What we've seen this year is for candidates that are going through interviews, we see them live chatting ChatGPT. So it's listening to the questions, producing answers for them, then they're reading the answers on the interview. And it's getting harder and harder to screen for that stuff during video interviews. So once again, like in-person interviews, and listen, we really want people to use AI for, like, we want to show that they can use AI well. Clearly, like, it's a really important part of the jobs. We're high, AI native people and everything. But at the same time, we got to show that they have supervisory capacity over the AI. Not that I can read things that it answers for me. Like that's not an AI engineer. That's not an AI native person. AI native person has supervisory capacity over agents that they're seeing. And you need to test for that. And in real life is I think the best way people are finding to do that right now. And in general too, once again, sales is the person I'm talking to a real person or not. I want someone I can trust. Everything went virtual. I think we'll see a boomerang. Once again, and we're a company who's in place to make offices more effective, and we see companies dealing with this right now. Actually, like that's the reason why they're bringing more people back to the office and building more hybrid strategies and everything, because in real life is becoming more and more important. Actually,
Yeah, that whole boomerang effect, the in real life, the think again type thing. Here's another one that's fascinating to me that this kind of ties into. Adam Grant. Big fan of his and the work that he does. And this was a few months ago. The debate is done in terms of what is the better quality learning? Is it to read from a physical textbook or a book of some kind versus digital? And the research was abundantly clear to put it to rest. It absolutely is physical text. Actually develops deeper learning and has a different type of effect on the synapses, the neurons that are developing, the schema formation, all that stuff that has to do with learning compared to digital. Now, we're not saying do away with digital. It's convenient, it's quick, it's easy. Yes, that's always going to be a part of our life. But also this in real life, the holding the actual text for the deeper learning and stuff like that. That to me is another kind of example of like, yes, we're going to continue to move forward with AI. It's going to continue to do incredible things for us, but there's going to also be these things where we're like, but not so fast. There's going to be these other things that we're like, hey, we're going to maintain doing it this because this should be a human touch. This should still continue to be done this other way because we actually get better results, better performance from doing it this particular way, and growing that wisdom and discernment along the way. And then who knows in the future, if something comes along to be like, it's actually different, that's changed now, then updating your schema, updating your understanding and be like, okay, now we're going to change to this because we've got enough data. It's just a fascinating world that we're in right now in terms of how quickly things are changing around things that we understand and know.
Right. What you'll be able to trust, right? That video is, and we're not going to be able to trust them anymore. So in real life will be so much more important in that content that we see. A lot there. Yeah. Well, a lot to unpack there. No doubt.
Micah, this has gone by so quickly. And I know we're going to be coming up on it here before too long. Before we get to kind of like some of the closing segments, I always like to ask, we've covered a lot so far together, but is there something on your mind or on your heart that you wanted to cover today that we haven't so far?
Yeah, we've talked about a lot of things. We've talked about the AI's impact on work. We talked about the in real life piece. I think the one thing we haven't talked about, which has kind of been the big thing in the press the past 5 years, one thing is hybrid work and people back in the office. We talk a little bit about people being less happy that are remote employees versus people that are in the office in general. And I really think that's an interesting thing we continue to go through. So last week, we saw New York City surpass the pre-COVID office occupancy levels for the first time. So we're starting to see that happen. And I think trying to settle out what that looks like is really interesting. And we see organizations still really struggling with that. So I think it's an interesting topic that we touched on a little bit in places, but we could have spent a whole hour just talking about that piece right there. But I think what we're finding is on the AI front, and we have some of the most innovative AI companies on the face of the planet as customers, they do most of their work in person. That should tell you something, Jason. That should really tell you something of the value of in-person work. And I think we touched on it a little bit there on the IRL stuff at the end, but but finding the balance is really hard. And we talked about HROs and CPOs and everything. What I think is we found a lot of people have just kind of thrown up their hands and been like, well, finding the balance is hard, so therefore I'm just going to stop trying. And I'm either going to say, all right, just be back in the office, which isn't necessarily the right answer all the time, or do whatever you want, which means be remote, by the way. If you say do whatever you want to employees, it means mostly remote. Finding that right balance is really hard, but worth the effort. It's definitely worth the effort. And we see companies really figured out what good looks like there finally after not knowing what that looks like. So that's really interesting. We're finally seeing companies get into rhythm, figure out what good looks like, and implementing that. And I think finding the benefits associated with it.
I'm so glad you brought this up, because I definitely have some strong takes on this. And let me start by saying 100% agree. I think hybrid is. I'm not surprised that that's what the results are showing, that that's what you're saying. And here's why. I'm going to bring a couple pieces of research to the table here. The first one is, have you ever heard of Dr. Kelly Harding? She wrote a book a few years ago that's called The Rabbit Effect. And it has to do with kindness. And the radical transformation has to do in our lives. Basically, in the book, she talks about how, as a social determinant of health, how important community is. But oftentimes when you go to the doctor, they're not talking about like, well, when's the last time you had a conversation with a best friend? When's the last time that you shared a meal with someone? Right? We know those things are really important to your health, but no, it's like, what are your symptoms? What's a prescription that you need? Right? And out the door and on to the next one. And so there's this communal aspect, this social determinant, of our health and our well-being, of needing to be around people. And not always, you brought this up earlier, myopic. We don't need to be around people that are like us all the time. We need diversity around us to challenge us, to help us understand when we're wrong, to help us understand when maybe our perspectives need to be challenged and get outside of our own thinking and our own little bubbles. And one of the best ways outside of, K through 12 education was work. That's how else you got around other people that, yes, at times they may be abrasive. They may push your buttons, they may push your triggers, but guess what? It's good for you. You need to figure out how to deal with it. You need to work through it, right? And it developed you as a human being. Feels like when we shifted 100% to just all remote, that we lost some of that. The other piece too, I think that ties into this from a social science perspective is everyone's heard of Abraham Maslow and the hierarchy of needs. Well, it wasn't until a friend of mine at Colorado State, Zach Mercurio, who's our leading expert in the world when it comes to belonging and mattering. He said, and I'm ashamed to admit this because I went to school to be a psychologist, but he said Maslow was wrong. And Maslow admitted it later on in life, his hierarchy of needs, because he talks about self-actualization, right? I didn't know this, but Zach said Maslow figured out before he passed away that self-actualization is a myth. No one actualizes on their own in a vacuum. It requires community. And Maslow, he took a step back from all of his work and he realized that like self-actualization is a myth. You often don't hear that whenever you see the stuff pulled up about the hierarchy of needs, right? But it's tying into what you're saying is that from a social science perspective, in terms of our DNA, in terms of who we are holistically, mind, body, and soul, our energy, that can it be challenging some days to show up to work and be around certain people that we may find challenging? Yes. But should we do it anyway on those days? Yes. It's good for us to go through those things. And guess what? We all need community. And work community is one of those places where once you're an adult, that's should be an important aspect of your life. It's not your whole life, but it's an important aspect of your life in terms of where you feel a sense of identity, where you feel a sense of purpose and value in the things that you're doing on a day-to-day basis and who you're doing it with and why you're doing it. And to your point, Micah, I'm so glad you're bringing this up, is I think we've lost a couple of those things. Understanding the importance of community, understanding how to actually get to actualization is through and with others, working on things together, the building of the teams you talked about that you're so passionate about. And we lose some of that whenever we're just 100% remote and we're never together, don't we?
Community is so important, and it was the one last one we had left. People talk about churches and bowling alleys, and in lots of areas of countries, there's not as many of those anymore. There's one final piece. So the community piece is so important, and that's why we see lower happiness among remote employees and everything else. There's one final important piece, Jason. You talked about it earlier. Why do you go and do CrossFit? Why don't you just work out in your garage?
Because I won't do it. I know myself. I'm gonna be like, no, because here's what always happens, Micah. It's I can go do. I'll just go do that later. And guess what? I don't. Guess what? If I show up at CrossFit, I know I'm accountable. They're going to be asking if I'm not there, and they're going to be pushing me hard.
It's motivation. And that's when they do studies around work, by the way. So they see the two important things around why showing up at the office is so important. One is the community aspect. It's learning. It's sitting next to other people, hearing how they're doing things, everything else. The other piece is motivation and peer pressure, that you actually have more motivation and peer pressure because you're around. Same reason why you go to CrossFit. It's hard to get up and be your best self all the time, right?
That's so good. That is so good. You can't hide. And that's what we need. And again, it gets back to that comfort thing we talked about too, is like, at first it was like, maybe I can hide a little bit. This is fantastic. But is it what you really need? Is it what the company really needs? Is that what's actually going to take you to the next level in your career, help you grow your income and things like that? No, it's like, there's got to be some of that friction. You were talking about that earlier. How you were like, we need some of this friction in order to get to the next level. I'm glad that you talked about that, because we're swimming in a whole bunch of comfort. And that's fine. We need some of that, but we also need some friction too. Micah, this has been so good. As we get ready to wrap up, I'm glad that you brought that up so that we could dive into that before we get ready to go off air here. But let's think a little bit here around ways that people can get in touch with you or the work that you're doing with Robin, because this has been such a stellar episode. I know a lot of listeners are going to want to learn more and follow more of the content that you and Robin are putting out to stay up on these things. So how can they do that?
Yeah, I love that question, Jason. So robinpowered.com is our website. So please visit that. We put out tons of blog posts. We put out thought leadership content and a whole bunch of research that we didn't even touch on this. We put a lot out there in the dynamics of the workplace. The second, hit me up on LinkedIn at Micah Remley. I don't think there's not another one of us out there at all. So hit me up on LinkedIn, and definitely try to put stuff out there professionally, things that we're seeing that's going on, thought leadership, everything else. So happy to connect there also.
Awesome. Micah, this was fantastic. We're also going to get some of the notes put in for a lot of the references, the books that you shared today. So many good resources. Thanks for being with us, and we'll catch you again next time.
Thanks for having me, Jason. Really appreciate it.
You got it. Thanks for tuning in to Working Forward. If you like what you hear, please hit the subscribe button wherever you listen to your favorite podcasts. Until next time, here's to building tomorrow today.